All right, welcome back to the Pond Hockey Eagles postgame show live from Ocean Casino. I'm Mike Missinelli, and oof, the Eagles lose 20-14 today. Terrible finish to this game. There's no way to get around it. So we're going to continue to talk about it. We bring in Mark Farcetta back to extend the play. But first, Farsi, before we extend the play with you here, tell us about the great charity we're involved with here at JAKIB Media and the big contest that we have going on with, I believe, me still leading the contest.
Yeah, last I checked, you are still have a handle. You're in the lead handily. All right. When it comes to text the word SCORE for EBOD. That's EBOD, the EBOD Foundation. Text the word SCORE to 833-202-9835. That's 833-202-9835. You could text these promo codes: Team Miss, Team Seth, Team Gun, and Team Farzi. Text the word SCORE to that number and also that promo code so you could get a vote for your team to take the lead and also give a vote to hopefully overtake and overthrow Mike Missinelli, who is far in the lead right now. Now, EBOD is a great charity that we have linked up here with the JAKIB Media channel to combat Alzheimer's as well as dementia. This is for the SCORE for a Cure charity event that we are taking part of right now for the Big Game Sweepstakes. And once again, you can text the word SCORE for the Big Game Sweepstakes for the big game. You know what I'm talking about. 833-202-9835 with those promo codes, and you can vote. Now, this comes down to Top Golf. This comes down to our overall golfing ability and which team will eventually win to help put somebody in and at the stands for the big game.
Yeah, my extended family voting many times, apparently, to keep me in the lead here. So, Mark, I would like to extend the play of the final drive, frankly. That's what I would like to extend the play about, but I know you have your different ideas about
it's not so much extending. I don't even like going with the offensive side of things, and when you have a guy like A.J. Brown, though, that is in the midst of putting up some historic numbers, I think you got to go with him. So it's not necessarily extending the play as much as it is extending the streak. As of right now, only 4 different wide receivers have had 100 receiving yard games in 4 consecutive games. Terrell Owens is one of those guys. Mike Quick is another. And A.J. Brown today with another 100-plus yard performance through the air extended that streak now. So I have to give him his props where props are due. And you might say that maybe, Mike, I know you mentioned this before, he has that A.J.I. Jalen Hurts might have that A.J.I. leaning in that direction one too many times. Well, it seems to be the go-to guy right now, and I'm not going to hold it against A.J. Brown for being that go-to guy for this offense week in and week out.
He should have had more of the A.J.I. today. Seriously. I mean, that slant is unstoppable, especially against the zone.
Well, that was also on the final drive, right? He was pissed off.
I shake my head. And, Dallas Goedert did have 5 catches today. They targeted him 8 times. But there's another guy against that zone I think could have been effective. I don't know, Seth. What do you think?
Hey, listen, I'm telling you, you got to think about zones in two ways. When guys just drop the landmarks, that's one way. The other thing is when guys drop but yet match up to guys in their area. So you might think that a guy is open because they're landmarking it, and a lot of times it's just one of those situations where, the guy matches up and you think he's open but he's really not. The other thing, too, is, the ability to identify zones. And instead of when you're running crossing routes, sitting down in zones instead of continuing to go across in zones. You see it all the time, where that's the coaching point. Like if I'm a flat player and I got a hook player, there's a hole here. If there's a hook player here and a hook player here, there's a hole here. So when you get behind the linebackers and you're able to sit down, you don't keep running into the linebacker. You sit down in between. You sit down in the gaps, and you got to have routes that are set up that way, or you're coaching your players, to sit down in zone concepts so that you can, hit those little short routes, move the chains, and keep drives alive.
All right. Well, that's a great answer. So, but here's the thing about next week. And John McMullen mentioned it. I think that a game like this has an effect on a team to go, maybe we've been taking this for granted. And we're up against a really good team, but at home. So I think they're really going to bounce back.
Well, A.J. Brown said as much after the game today. I mean, he talked about last year when they lost to the Commanders, one of the things that was almost a weight off their shoulders type of situation was we no longer have to talk about being perfect anymore. We have to no longer talk about whether or not we're going to go undefeated in 72 Dolphins and all that. So all that goes out the window now. You get a fresh start, and they say this type of game can be what the Commanders game was last year, almost a reset button. Now, the way they responded last week was a game we talked about briefly earlier. Last year they came out and they lost to the Commanders. Then they went out and they struggled against the Indianapolis Colts for 3 quarters worth of football. They're not going to be able to struggle for 3 quarters worth of football against the Miami Dolphins coming up next Sunday. So that's a little bit of an issue right there. But if you're going to look at this, as we said earlier, with any bit of a, not a silver lining, but if you're looking at this to be a little extra added motivation for next year, or next week, excuse me, it certainly is going to be that.
All right, let's get into our game balls now. And this might be a difficult decision. Do we have to pick an eagle for game balls? Anyway, game balls are brought to us by the great people at Colony Pools. Flywithcolony.com is their website. Let Colony Pools power wash your home right now because the homes are grimy as you get into the fall season. And also close your pool. You got to close those pools now. Get your Red October pool cover or your Kelly Green pool cover. So a couple of great options from Colony Pools. Game balls. All right, go ahead, D.
I'm going to have to give it to A.J. He had a $131, 4 consecutive games over 125 yards receiving. That one catch he made on the deep throw over his shoulder to keep his body under control, keep his feet in, the one that was under review and it turned out to be a catch, which it should have been. That's typical A.J. Brown. Wasn't many shining moments in this offense in this game today, but I thought A.J. stood out among the rest.
Seth, who you got?
You know what, man? Gosh. I'm going to give it, believe it or not, I'm going to give it to the defense today. The defense gave up 244 total yards, okay, on 11 drives. That's 4.1 yard per. 155 net yards passing and 89 yards on the ground on 21 carries. Under normal circumstances, that's enough to win you the football game if your offense steps up and does what it needs to do. Hard for me to look at the offensive side of the ball and give anyone a game ball on that side of the ball when you have a situation where, you turn the ball over 4 times and you lose the football game to a team that you shouldn't even be in the same stadium with. They should have scored 40 points on this team today.
All right, Farsi, go ahead.
I'm going to go with the guy I went with earlier. I'm going to ride Hassan Reddick. I mean, this has been a guy that ever since he has been 100% healthy coming back and been able to use that other hand, he has been the monster patrolling the backfield since we have seen him as a member of the Philadelphia Eagles and beyond, still when he was with the Cardinals and with the Panthers as well. I mean, you're talking about a guy now 5.5 sacks in the last 3 games, all 5.5 sacks coming without that cast on his hand. He continues to wreak havoc on quarterbacks, and whether or not he's a guy you could bank on, whether or not he's a guy you could rely on, whether or not he's a guy who could dominate defensively, he definitely deserves a game ball from me.
I am totally in agreement with you. I had to go defense, like Seth said. And Hassan had 5 tackles today, 2 for losses and 2.5 sacks, and he is really revving it up. But if I had to go to the other side, Quincy Williams was a monster for the Jets today. He really was. Not Quincy, his brother, 12 tackles and 1 tackle for loss. He was all over the field, and then he got that fumble recovery. So there's our game.
Score and save in southeastern PA and Delaware with Colony Pools this football season. And let the experts close your pool with a custom Merlin safety cover in green for the birds. And if you join our Winter Watch team, we'll give you another 20% off, and Colony Pools will handle it all. Keep your tiles on your pool, not in your pool. Fly with Colony right now, Birds fans. Visit flywithcolony.com.